Hi, and welcome to Stellabration Good Times with Lexi Barker and Izzy Ochoa, Volume 1. Today we're going to walk through major points of the lesson from the past couple of weeks that really stuck out to me and Lexi and I, sorry. We're going to walk through first impressions and their impact, cognitive development, but precisely Piaget and how he greatly impacted our understanding of cognitive development, and lastly, how learner differences should impact how we treat students. We're going to leave you with a good quote. Brian Herbert once said, "The capacity to learn is a gift, the ability to learn is a skill, and the willingness to learn is a choice." We're first going to dive into first impressions. First impressions. There is a tendency within academics or even in everyday life to discriminate. Upfront discrimination can be brought out by racial or class difference, or even more subtly in response to another's appearance or language. In Deborah DeCastro Ambrosetti and Grace Cho's A Look at Lookism, they delved into the world of unconscious bias and discrimination within school setting. Teachers were asked to predict how well a student would perform, what their peer relations were like, what their attitudes were like, and parental interest, all based on certain documents and criteria. Appearance first played a main part, but then fell second to the student's overall record. The results showed there were stereotypical perceptions of the student, which would translate to an unequivalent handling in the classrooms. When we judge based on appearance or in accordance with unconscious prejudice, we limit that person and place an unfair level of expectation on them. Whether it's looking to the Asian student for help in math or not allowing the child who smells weird to answer a question, we place these kids in boxes and don't allow them to tell us otherwise. For the future and present, this lesson is crucial. Everyone holds the right to learn or ask questions. If we think otherwise, we strip them of their ability to learn and of their equality. Reading up on problems like these also helps us identify our own biases, make them aware to ourselves, and overcome ignorance.
I love learning about the brain. I'm amazed at how it works, how we hold all this information, experiences, memories all in our heads. Cognitive development resonated with me because it is interesting to learn how our brain learns from infancy to adulthood. I enjoyed our lesson thinking back to the good old days and explaining the conditions in which I think a brain can function when learning in a classroom. Cognitive development is how children analyze their thought processes through an approach by Piaget, who I will talk about in this lesson. Piaget believed children can learn and think differently in stages in how they grow cognitively in the classroom when learning. Piaget's stages of cognitive development consist of 4 stages. Sensory motor, in which children can learn through their senses and interacting with their environment, such as when babies are curious with their toys. Pre-operational is when children begin to think symbolically and use language to describe objects, and this tends to be called the pretend play stage. This can include learning their ABCs and 1, 2, 3s starting in kindergarten. Concrete operational is when children begin to think logically and understand conservation, such as the example of answering questions in class with logical thinking. And finally, formal operational, which is when children start to think abstractly and can reason through problems, like in math class. In addition to Piaget's theory, he also believes children have a mental map or a schema in which help them organize and interpret their thoughts. In this example, the girl knows that a fluffy 4-legged animal is called a doggy, so this is called a schema, which she already has. When a child is presented with new information, the child uses their existing schemas to interpret this new info, called a simulation. Like in this example, she sees another fluffy 4-legged animal, so it must be a doggy, right? However, the child is told that the animal is a cat, which means the girl is presented with the new information and fits this info into a new schema, along with her existing schemas, called accommodation. A little fun fact about the human brain: did you know that the average human brain weighs about 3 pounds? I bet you didn't know that. Our brains hold a lot of those memories and experiences, info, all in those 3 pounds. Aren't we just so smart? In this lesson about learner differences, it was interesting to go deeper into learning about how schools accommodated for students with learning disabilities to give them the best quality of education to benefit that student. There are intelligence theories of the IQ theorists that describe how students can have certain types of intelligence depending on their views. In learning about learner differences, it was interesting to hear the programs or systems schools provide to learning disabilities, such as an IEP or an individualized educational program, which I will explain further. An IEP is used to create the opportunity for students, families, and teachers and other parties to construct a legal document for children with learning disabilities. When a student in a classroom has a hard time reading to the current grade level, as teachers are mandated reporters, they issue an IEP in order to ask permission to take that child in for testing to set them up for success. The IEP will ensure that the child is making progress throughout their academic career. A meeting is set up between the teacher and the other administration to discuss if that child qualifies for specialized accommodations. Sadly, however, many students who displayed a learning difference gets passed along to the next grade level most of the time because the process of an IEP is very strenuous and time-consuming. Not that the teachers don't care about that particular student, but they just don't have the time to set up an IEP and go through that process.
Another lesson from Lesson 4's learner differences is IQ theorists. The first IQ theorist, Spearman. Spearman's theory of mental ability, or the two-factor theory, includes the concept of general intelligence being the source of general ability, known as the G factor, and specific abilities known as S factors, as the G is speared into different S factors. S factors all stem from the general ability. Aspects like verbal reasoning, quantitative reasoning, abstract visual reasoning, and short-term memory branch off of general intelligence. Sternberg's triarch theory of successful intelligence states that intelligent behavior is found through the combined analytical, creative, and practical abilities. CAP! A balance of these allows individuals to reach success among certain contexts. The next IQ theorist, Cattle and Horn, or the next, I guess. Cattle and Horn's theory states that general intelligence is divided into two categories, fluid and crystallized intelligence. Fluid intelligence is the ability to reason and solve problems in unique and new situations. It grants flexibility in thinking among new ideas or problems, so like milk. Crystallized intelligence refers to the ability to use knowledge acquired through past learning or experience, just as ice cream is acquired through a past use of milk. And then our last is Gardner's multiple intelligence. Gardner's multiple intelligence theory states that people don't have just an intellectual capacity, but rather have many kinds of intelligences, including musical, interpersonal, spatial visual, and linguistic intelligences, just as a gardener has many different plants in his garden or her garden. This lesson stood out for me from the little language tricks to learn them, and then the actual meaning stuck out as well. It is so important to see the differing ways children think and how they express their intelligence. I can't in the future expect all of my students to be geniuses at history or to love it as much as I do. With this knowledge, I can create art projects or have them film a movie or apply history to whatever they love. I want to make history appealing to everyone's personal style of knowledge and intelligence testing. This helped identify the fact that all kids are different. Even pointed out how if they do poorly on a test, that does not make them dumb, that's just not their preferred method of showcasing their intelligence. And that concludes everything for the Stellabration number 1. So, we've gone over the lessons of the past couple of months and focused on first impressions and the biases that could be involved in them, cognitive development, but more precisely Piaget's involvement, and lastly, learner differences and how they can impact children. Lexi and I, undergoing all of this information and recalling all of it, have decided to never stop learning because life never stops teaching.